I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you are going to learn something today. It's time for another round of FPV receiver testing. And all the contenders are up on screen right now. And if you're looking at this and going, what about my favorite one? Where is Clearview? Where is Rapid Fire? I can only get so many of them on screen without having to shrink them down. And anyway, so we got 6 at a time, and these are the 6 we're looking at today. I've decided to leave Clearview and Rapid Fire out because, number one, Clearview just mops the field with everybody, right? So it's just clearly better. And it's a ground station anyway. It's not really fair. And Rapid Fire, between Rapid Fire and LaForge, which one is like just sort of the standard that so many people have? So I decided LaForge is in here because it's like the standard that everybody has. We've got the EV200D, which is new goggles from Eachine that I reviewed. I gave them a generally positive review, but how is their RF performance? Is that a deal breaker? Today you're going to find out. I've got the Fat Shark transformer down in the lower left, and it is mostly in here because I've also got the FXT Viper, which are both head-worn panel mount goggles. They're kind of similar, so I wanted to compare them. And in the upper right, I've got TrueRC and the Furious FPV Dock King, which is a ground station that a TrueRC module plugs into, but it's supposed to improve things. So I've put them right next to each other, and here we go. We are flying. As I usually do in my FPV receiver testing, I am playing this back for you at 50% speed. I find that at full speed, it goes by so quickly it can be kind of hard, especially with 6 on screen at a time, to see what's going on. You can modify that in the lower right if you're watching this on YouTube by changing the playback speed in YouTube to be either 2x, in which case it'll be full speed, or you could slow it down even more. And here we are moving along. A couple things to look at. Is the antenna diversity of the transformer helping it again or hurting it against the FXT Viper, which has true RF receiver diversity? And is the Dock King improving things compared to the TrueRC? And how's the EV200D doing compared to, well, everybody else, but LaForge and the TrueRC is kind of like the standard that everybody sets. Here we go, behind the barn, through the woods. This is the toughest portion of the test. The patch antenna is not pointing this direction. Who's doing the best and who is doing the worst? Well, I'd have to go watch this like 10 more times. Now I'm going to fly up into this part of the property, and I'm just going to do some circles in place. This is a tough place where we're kind of in the worst part. We're behind the house. Transformer having some dropouts there. Viper having some dropouts. LaForge seems to be hanging in there pretty good. TrueRC hanging in there pretty good. Kind of hard to tell if Dock King is making TrueRC any better. It's supposed to clean up the signal some. That's a tough one. You can see the Dock King OSD dropping out, meaning it's losing the lock on the signal or whatever it does. Some of you have noticed now that the EV200D in this test is labeled as 2X antennas. So in this test, I've got only one patch and one Omni on the EV200D. It does support quadversity, but I wanted to just test it just to see how its receiver held up against the other ones without the advantage of a whole nother patch antenna. So I'm going to run this test again in a minute with 4 antennas on the EV200. Here we're down in this concrete area doing some circles. The idea here is that these concrete walls are going to create a lot of multipath bounces, and maybe we'll see how these guys hold up against that. And away we go. Coming around the front of the property, we are definitely on the patch antenna right now. Signal getting much cleaner for most everybody. And going to fly in here and land. And then we will do the second test where the EV200 will have a patch antenna pointing back at the woods at the hardest part. So now, are we giving the EV200D an unfair advantage? Hey, it's the only one who came here with 4 receivers, so for 4 antennas. So, may as well use it. And here we go. Now, I wouldn't expect these results to be much different, except we're going to look especially at the EV200D as we go behind the barn. It has a patch antenna pointed right at that direction, as well as another patch antenna pointed the same direction as everybody else toward the front yard. It's also got an extra Omni antenna, and I think that'll help it. Great. I don't know. Here we go. I gotta say, I'm reasonably impressed with the results from some of the budget options here, most notably the FXT Viper, which runs $159. It is doing, I think it looks like it's not quite doing as well as like LaForge and TrueD or even the EV200D, but it's not doing bad. And when you consider that oh, hang on. Here we go. This is the part. And yeah, as you'd expect with that 10 dB patch antenna pointing back here at the barn, the EV200D is doing way better than it did in the first one, and it's frankly doing better than everybody else. That's what you'd expect. Everybody else is on their Omni antenna, which has 2 dB of gain. The EV200D now has 10 dB of gain. It's got 8 dB of advantage. That is a substantial advantage, which is only possible because it has that extra receiver. The other thing we gotta look at here with the EV200 is, are we seeing a lot of like diversity switching? Because there's certainly a question of whether the 4 receivers would result in more diversity switching than you would with 2 receivers and more signal breakup. I've heard some people suggest that the EV200's 4 receivers are all like synced so that they don't do that, so they don't create diversity switching artifacts. I don't know if that's true, but we can certainly look at these results and see if we think we see a lot more switching artifacts with the EV200D. Here in the multipath test, maybe we'll see some advantage with the EV200D having 2 Omni antennas, helping it pick up the strongest of the multipath bounces. You could also consider maybe putting a left hand and a right hand on there. You could mix it up in ways when you have the 4 antennas that you wouldn't have the option to do with only 2. Another question that people have asked is, what happens if you use the EV200D with standard modules instead of the modules it came with? Is that better or worse? That is not a test we're going to do today, but I do know you guys are curious about that. Maybe we'll do that a different time. And as we come to the end of this flight, I'm going to give you guys a few of my conclusions. Of course, you're always welcome to come to your own conclusions. That's why I give you the data, and you can decide if you agree or disagree with me. But many of you guys want to hear what I think as well, so I'll tell you. And by the way, I'm going to land here, but then I'm going to do some freestyle, so you can watch me do a little freestyle and see how these modules handle with normal flying conditions as I talk you out. Did the TrueD do much better when it was in the Dock King ground station compared to when it was in Fat Shark goggles? That's a claim that's been made. And I have to say I didn't really see it. To me, the Dock King and the TrueD looked very, very close. There are other advantages to the Dock King that we'll talk about when I do a review of the Dock King, but the idea that the Dock King is somehow cleaning up or improving the signal, doing some kind of, like Clearview or rapid fire like thing, didn't really seem to be borne out. The TrueD and the Dock King looked pretty similar to me. The Transformer versus the FXT Viper. Again, these guys looked pretty close. I was surprised to see this because the Transformer has antenna diversity. The FXT Viper has 2 receivers, has proper true full diversity. I didn't see a lot of difference between them in terms of like the Transformer having worse diversity switching or doing a worse job or being slower to switch over to its patch antenna. It seemed to be doing okay. If we were in a very multipath heavy environment, that difference might be more accentuated, but at least in this environment, the Transformer's antenna diversity seemed to be doing okay. The FXT Viper did pretty freaking good. I think I saw some times when LaForge and TrueD beat it, but when you consider that the FXT Viper costs not that much more than a LaForge all by itself, there you go. As far as the EV200 did, I gotta say this test is the final straw for me to be willing to recommend the EV200D without too much hesitation. Its performance was pretty good, and especially when it was allowed to use all 4 of its receivers. And bear in mind, these are the stock receivers you get for $300. These aren't even something fancy like an Eachine Pro 58 or LaForge or TrueD. The performance was pretty good, and when it was allowed to use the extra patch antennas, it got even better. It was a clear winnow, and it speaks to the fact that there's just no substitute for antenna gain, but most of the time we can't run higher gain antennas because they're so directional. But when you're allowed to have 3 or 4 of the antennas, the fact that they're directional, they can all just fan out and cover each other's dead spots, and you can get, if you're willing to look like a freaking moose with antlers hanging off your head with all these antennas, the EV200D did a great job, and at a price of $300, it definitely is worth a look. If they make it even better by addressing some of the complaints in my review of it at a price of $300, wow, right? So there you go. that is going to do it for this review of these goggles. Well, it's not really a review, just a flight testing of these goggles. Go back, watch it slow-mo, watch it fast speed, pick through it one by one and see who is the best. Good luck with that. Thanks for watching. Happy flying.